Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week so far. If you're an Indiana fan, hopefully you like the new hire. Darian DeVries is your new basketball coach at Indiana University. Okay. I think I like the hire. Sounds good. It's a pretty hot name last year. This year, however, he wasn't on anyone's radar. And that's just simply because I don't think people expected him to leave West Virginia after only one season. But then again, Indiana shows up, and Indiana is a significantly better job than West Virginia. If you're a West Virginia fan listening to this, get over it. If you wanted to keep him, then you should have gotten your money up. Because that's the reality of it. Indiana is one of the best jobs in the country because they have one of the best NIL funds in the country. And as long as that continues to happen, Indiana will have their pick of the litter in terms of who they hire to be their new head coach. Okay, so West Virginia fans, get your money up if you want to hold on to coaches like DeVries. I think another thing that played a role in this is he sat around, Selection Sunday expecting to make the NCAA tournament, gets booted out for North Carolina, a blue blood. And he was like, you know what? If I was at, a blue blood like Indiana, then maybe I wouldn't have gotten screwed. So now he's here, right? Moving to Bloomington. His kid probably going to come with him, I would assume. And it's going to be interesting. I'm excited for this. He coached at Creighton University as an assistant for 20 years. Greg McDermott, a guy who's obviously spent a lot of time with DeVries, had some thoughts on him being hired by Indiana yesterday. Here's Coach Greg McDermott, who coached with Darian DeVries for a long time at Creighton.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited for D-Rock and Ashley and their family. That's Tucker and Tatum. It's going to be a really neat experience. Obviously, he's done all the right things. When he was my assistant here, and what he did at Drake, and the way he quickly turned around that West Virginia program in a year. And even though they were a little short getting to the NCAA tournament, it's a great opportunity for him. As I told him today, welcome to the pressure cooker. But I couldn't be more excited for him. He's done it the right way, and now he's got one of the elite jobs in the country.
Greg McDermott, a guy who used to work with Darian DeVries, the new head coach of your Indiana Hoosiers. And Coach McDermott saying, welcome to the pressure cooker is exactly right. I don't think there's a better way to say welcome to Indiana than that, because Indiana is going to give Darian DeVries every resource to win immediately. A lot of NIL money. He's going to be able to go out into the transfer portal. There are already guys leaving Indiana. We'll get into them here at some point during the show. And Indiana's going to give him everything he needs to succeed. A lot of money. Luke Goody, because he's back. What more do you need? So hopefully he can show up and he can win immediately. I think this is a good hire. Now, if you haven't watched Drake, before this year, if you didn't pay attention to West Virginia this year, then you may not know too much about Darian DeVries. I think this guy's a good coach. He took over Drake in 2018, and he led Drake to a 150-55 record over the course of 6 seasons, made the NCAA tournament 3 times, he's won an NCAA tournament game as well. So after 6 seasons of winning a whole bunch of games in the Missouri Valley, he leaves Drake, goes to West Virginia, and he goes 19-13. Misses the NCAA tournament. That's what they went this year in his 1 year there. He did that without his best player for most of the season. This guy's a good coach, and I can say that with confidence because he's won 71% of the games that he's coached. And I think one of the important things about hiring anyone at Indiana is they have to understand how big of a deal this job is, the magnitude and the pressure that comes with the job. Here was his quote after accepting the Indiana job, quote, "This is unquestionably one of the top jobs in America. as someone who grew up in the Midwest, loving the game of basketball, I've always admired the IU basketball program for its championship level success, tradition, and fan support. There's a passion to succeed at the very highest levels, both within the Big Ten and in the NCAA tournament. And that's a desire that I, as a coach, share. On top of that, the alignment is there on a department and university level to make that happen. I'm excited for this opportunity, and I'm ready to work relentlessly to assemble a staff and a roster that competes for championships. I love this. That is a great opening statement. Nothing about, former Indiana legends. Nothing in there really about Coach Knight, right? It's about the program. It was about IU and restoring it to a team that consistently competes for championships. He brought up winning, which is really all that I care about. Okay, I don't care how he recruits. I don't care about any of that stuff. Just win games. If he wins games with me, you, and 3 snails, then hey, sounds good to me. Like, let's just go win some basketball games. The other thing that I like about him is he understands college basketball. He's dealt with NIL. He's dealt with that part of the game over the last few years. And for me, I think that this hire makes a ton of sense for Indiana. Okay, this hire is the total opposite of the Mike Woodson hire. Okay, I'm officially coining this as the ex-girlfriend theory. For those unfamiliar, when people break up, their next significant other tends to be very different, if not the total opposite, from whoever they just broke up with. And we see this all the time in sports with the way that teams and universities hire new head coaches. And we've seen this with the Indiana hire. What did Archie Miller and Mike Woodson do the same? Besides lose. Not much. Like, those two guys couldn't have been more different. Mike Woodson, an Indiana guy through and through, coached under Knight, played under Knight, coached in the NBA, all that stuff. Archie Miller, none of that. No. From outside Indiana, all that kind of stuff. And now we're going from Mike Woodson to Darian DeVries. And these two guys couldn't be any different. Mike Woodson, former Indiana basketball player. Darian DeVries played at Northern Iowa. Mike Woodson has heavy NBA ties. Played in the NBA for 11 years, then coached in the NBA for 22 years as both an assistant and a head coach. And then you compare that to Darian DeVries, who never played or coached in the NBA. I think his only experience with the NBA is probably going to games. Okay, this guy is a college coach through and through. He has spent a lot of time coaching college basketball, and he's had success in doing so. Mike Woodson hadn't had any success coaching in college. Shoot, he barely had success coaching in the NBA. Darian DeVries is this proven head coach in the world of college basketball, whereas Mike Woodson was not. Once again, you can't, the two guys couldn't be any more different. And yes, Darian DeVries won a lot at Drake. I also want to look at what he did at West Virginia. I thought he did a really nice job this year of showing up at West Virginia and winning. It's like, but Jonathan, he went 19-13 and didn't make the tournament. Sounds a lot like Indiana's season. Here's the difference. West Virginia's best player only played 8 games. Tucker DeVries, Darian DeVries' son, who I fully expect to follow his dad to Indiana. Guy was a stud at Drake, was the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year, and was on pace to be a stud in the Big 12. Averaging 15 points a game and 5 rebounds on 47% shooting from 3 before he got hurt this year. Losing a player like that makes it tough to win. Injuries are not an excuse for losing. They are a legitimate reason. Before he got hurt, Tucker DeVries, West Virginia's best player, West Virginia beat Gonzaga, pretty good basketball team, and Arizona, another pretty good basketball team. Two teams that made the tournament, two teams that are probably going to win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. When you lose one of your best players, you're not going to be as good. Yet to be able to rally the troops, so to speak, and win 13 games on the year, I find that impressive. Like, imagine how bad this Indiana team would have been if they'd lost their best player for, 25 of their 33 games this year, or however many they played. They don't go 19-13. Indiana was pretty healthy this year and barely managed to go 19-13. West Virginia was not. Like, sure, Indiana lost Malik Renew for a few games, but that is not the same thing as losing Tucker DeVries for the whole year. Before Darian DeVries showed up at West Virginia went a whopping 9-23 last year. Darian DeVries walks in that building, and they go 19-13 once again without their best player for most of the season. That's a major improvement in 1 year. And now he's coming to Indiana, which I would argue is in a little better shape than West Virginia was when he took over. Okay, Indiana has more resources than West Virginia. That's why he left. Once again, West Virginia, if you don't want this to happen to you again, get your money up. Hopefully, with these resources and hopefully with his ability to coach at a high level, he shows up here at Indiana and he takes Indiana from being a team that went 19-13 to a team that goes like 25-7. If he does that, no one will be upset about this hire. If you don't like this hire, then I think you're just purposefully going out of your way to find something that you don't like about this. Okay, because I think on a surface level, when you look at his track record, his 7 years as a head coach in the world of college basketball, he's done nothing but showed up and won. Hopefully, I'm right. Hopefully, Darian DeVries shows up. Indiana wins, 25 games next year. And Indiana's, playing deep into the NCAA tournament because college basketball is just better when Indiana's good. Okay, like this is a true blue blood, or Indiana's a true blue blood. And when Indiana's good at basketball, the rest of the country responds to it. Gritty joining in our YouTube chat. If you want to watch on YouTube, head over to Indy Sports Ticket. Gritty, you're the biggest IU fan that listens to the show that I'm aware of. Please tell me your thoughts on the Darian DeVries hire. Okay, I'm excited. I don't know much about how Darian DeVries likes to play. I really hope he's not like a two big men on the floor kind of guy. I'm hoping he's like one center and a bunch of guys around who can really shoot. Personally, that's really what I want. I want a coach who emphasizes his team's ability to shoot the basketball. I think that would be awesome because Mike Woodson didn't do that really at all this last season. Yeah. And, good news for Coach DeVries. If he wants Luke Goody, he was granted a 5th year. That's a guy who can shoot, sort of, kind of, maybe. He has some good shooting games from time to time, to be fair. So with, Mike Woodson stepping down, guys that played for Indiana this last year, like they are going to transfer. It's going to happen. And we've already had a couple guys enter the NCAA transfer portal. Okay, so I do want to talk about those guys and Luke Goody here really quickly before we head to break. By the way, Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, he's going to coming up at 11, and we're going to get into, or at 10:20, excuse me, and we are going to discuss the NCAA tournament bracket. So I actually don't have time to get into everything I was going to say about Cups and Malik Renew. That's all right. It's all good. Instead, we're going to talk about the first 4 last night. Just because North Carolina won by a bajillion points doesn't mean that they should have been in the NCAA tournament. It's kind of where I'm at on that. Sure, they won by a lot, but this is kind of the cool thing about the NCAA tournament. Once you're in, nothing else really seems to matter. So when we come back here in about, 4 minutes or so, I'm going to have Zach Pereles join the show. We're going to start by discussing Darian DeVries coming over from West Virginia to be the new head coach here in Indiana. And then we're going to get into the NCAA tournament and what our brackets look like. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports is going to join the show when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Joining me now from CBS Sports to talk about Darian DeVries to Indiana and the NCAA tournament in general. It is Zach Pereles. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm as good as I can be. I love this time of year, and I can't wait for it to really get going tomorrow.
I can't either. The first game last night between Alabama State and St. Francis was awesome. North Carolina and San Diego State, though, was not. Before we talk about all the games, though, in the tournament, what are your thoughts on Darian DeVries leaving West Virginia after a season to come to IU?
Yeah, well, what an awful week for West Virginia, but what a huge pull for Indiana. I love the hire. I just think Darian DeVries is such a good coach. You've seen him win so many different ways. Those Drake teams that he had, really, really good offensively. And then this past year, West Virginia, really good defensively. This is a team that lost, Darian DeVries' son Tucker early in the season, and somehow apparently the committee used that against him because he was done in early December, and they just kept winning big games. So, and it sounds like he's following his dad to Indiana. So really love the move. I think Darian DeVries has been a really high quality coach, wins in a lot of ways, gets good guard play, and he's obviously going to have tremendous resources at Indiana. The offense is modern. It's really good. The defense, he's shown that he can get the most out of what he has. So I think it's a home run hire, and I'm really excited to see where Indiana goes roster-wise this offseason.
Would you classify it as a potential Grand Slam hire?
I mean, that's a good one. I think that can we give out 3-run home runs? How about
That's
that?
fine. That works. That's kind of an inside joke here on the show. There's a writer here in Indianapolis who called Indiana hiring Archie Miller a Grand Slam hire. And it didn't go very well. So it's kind of a joke here on just our station in general. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. He clearly likes Darian DeVries coming over to Indiana, a really good offensive coach. When you said good guard play, I was like, I'm good. That sounds great because Indiana has not had that, outside of maybe Jalen Hood-Schifino under Mike Woodson. And as you said, Indiana's going to give him every resource possible to succeed. He turned around West Virginia pretty quickly, so I'm excited for him. Not as excited as I am for the NCAA tournament, though. Let's jump into it. What is the first round matchup that you're looking forward to watching the most?
There are a lot of good ones. I think I'm really interested in. How about we go with the first one? I always love that they give us this really tough game to pick right off the bat. Louisville Creighton is a really, really good one. I always love, if you miss that game, you're like, my bracket is ruined because all these people have 10 points and I have 0. That's a really, really good one. I'm trying to go over the entire thing here. I think that, a good one that maybe has gone a little bit under the radar because neither team has had quite as good of a season as we expected is Kansas and Arkansas. Obviously, you've got 2 great coaches in Bill Self and John Calipari. And both teams, Kansas has just been, they have on paper all this talent, and it just hasn't come together, and they don't shoot it well, and they don't get to the basket and don't take a lot of free throws. Arkansas has, all these different guys, former big name recruits under Coach Cal at Kentucky. But I think that this could be a really good game because there's plenty of talent for both teams here. And I really do think there's no reason that one of them couldn't say, hey, this is literally our last chance to make something out of this season. And then another 7-10 game. I think, how about we go with this one? I know I've given you 3. This is my favorite game, Marquette and New Mexico in that 7-10 matchup. 2 of the best guards in the nation, Donovan Dent and Cam Jones. That could be a 90 to 88 game.
Okay, I have many thoughts on what you just said. So let's start with Louisville and Creighton. Do you find it as big of a travesty as everybody else that Louisville is an 8 seed? I don't.
I don't. Like, how about Gonzaga being the 9th best team in the nation for Ken Palm being an 8 seed? That's a travesty.
Okay, that's a great point. The ACC wasn't very good this year. I mean, I think Duke played like one ranked team like all year in conference play, and it was Louisville in the ACC championship game, or it was like the first ranked team that they'd played in like 2 months or something crazy like that. So like, I don't mind them being an 8 seed. Bringing up the Arkansas and Kansas game is so perfect for me because I don't know if you know this. I am an Arkansas fan through and through. Got like family down there, grew up there, and I'm excited for this game. I am worried. They're pretty banged up, especially in the front court. But like you said, like these are two teams that are really talented that just haven't quite figured things out. And Bill Self and Calipari, come on, like. You can't get like that. There's not a better coaching matchup in the first round than that I'm aware of, at least.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. I was actually writing last night. I was writing a story about best seed upsets for each seed line. So 9, 10, 11, because remember, there's a big difference between a betting underdog and a seed underdog. And I went with Arkansas in this one. I just think like, there have been too many times this year where I'm like, all right, let's see if Kansas can put it all together, and they don't. And the one that sticks in my mind a ton, obviously, is BYU. They went on the road and lost by 34, and it looked like not even just like half the guys didn't want to be there. It didn't look like anybody wanted to be there. And I don't really get it. Like, they have experience. They brought in transfers, but I just think like Arkansas is more likely to play a good game than Kansas is. Like, if you watch Kansas and they played fine, and probably Hunter Dickinson will get his, and they lost by 5 or 10 or whatever, like, that would not be surprising other than if you watched any basketball this year. Like, you keep giving them chances and they keep throwing them away. Like, last week, Big 12 tournament, there's no reason that Kansas can't say, all right, like, it's postseason mode. We know that we're in the tournament, but let's see, if we can kind of get it together. And then they need overtime to beat UCF. And then they lose in the second round, like, with kind of go out with the whimper against Arizona. So I just, like, sometimes you have to go with what your eyes see and what you trust. And I have just seen Kansas too many times this year look lackadaisical, just look like they don't want to be there. And yeah, like, I would much rather, I'd feel a lot better picking Arkansas and getting it wrong than I would picking Kansas and getting it wrong.
Yep, that makes total sense. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. You can read his stuff over at cbssports.com. You can also sign up for his newsletter there as well. And then the last game that you mentioned, New Mexico and Marquette, I love. It's perfect. I actually have New Mexico in my Sweet 16 because, as you said, the Dent kid's amazing. New Mexico has a lot of size for a mid-major team, 3 guys in their starting lineup that are 6'9" or taller, which I like, especially since Marquette is a little undersized at some spots. What is it about that game that kind of draws you to it?
Yeah, I mean, the guard play, like you mentioned, is just outstanding. Marquette brings a ton of pressure, and there's not a better guy that you could want than Donovan Dent. You mentioned the size as well. Nelly Joseph was the conference defensive, or I think he was wasn't conference defensive player of the year, but he was a first team guy out there in the Mountain West. Like, this is a really good team with a lot of really high level talent. Mustafa Amzil shoots the heck out of the ball, or at least he hasn't been quite as good this year. I just think that they have all the pieces, kind of like you mentioned. I'm always looking at guard play first, as we've definitely talked about. And I'm interested to see what True Washington does against Cam Jones. Like, they have the guys. I do think like there's enough there. And I just like, these are the types of games that you love because they're two teams that have had high highs, and maybe you see one of them as a Sweet 16 team, maybe not, but not everything. I always think this, like, a lot of times I'll get who's your champion, who's your Final Four. I don't think that everything has to be so black and white. Like, winning a game in the NCAA tournament is awesome. And so many of these guys talk about just how excited they are to play in the tournament. So that's why it's such an exciting game. I don't think either of them win another game after that, but winning an NCAA tournament game, like, that stays with you forever. And both these teams with really good guard play is going to make it really fun.
They are joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NCAA tournament. So New Mexico, they're the double-digit seed that I have winning a couple games. I've got them beating Marquette and then beating Michigan State, which I don't love betting against Izzo. I just really like this New Mexico team. Do you have a double-digit seed in your bracket that goes on a run?
So I have not filled out my bracket yet. I always think when the bracket comes out, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. So much information. You get 68 teams in half an hour. And then, I'm writing for a few days.
Yeah.
But like, there are definitely some that I have my eye on. Colorado State is a really, really good team. They have just been on fire recently, 10 straight wins.
Nick Clifford. Bucket.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an NBA guy. I think right now I have them getting past Memphis, kind of waffled back and forth on that. And then I think that they can get past Maryland. Like, Maryland doesn't have a deep bench. That Grand Canyon team is sneaky tough for Maryland. So I do think Colorado State's a great example. The one that everyone's going to be talking about right now is obviously North Carolina as that 11 seed, especially after last night. I kind of go back and forth on North Carolina here. I do think that if they beat Ole Miss in the first round, they are a Sweet 16 team, because I'm just not super high on Iowa State, which has kind of struggled here down the stretch. So I think those are a couple double-digit seeds. And then on the other side of the bracket, how about let's give a shout out to VCU. I think they beat BYU in that first game and then probably get Wisconsin. That'll be a really good game too. Experienced teams. Should be a lot of fun.
A lot of people like VCU. My thing is, I have questions about their offense. Like, they just don't seem can they score with BYU? That's kind of my concern with them.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a very valid concern. And we've seen that offense, as you mentioned, it's been good at times. It's been bad at times. I do think that they have enough. They have probably 4 or 5 different guys that can give you double figures on any given night, but not just give you double figures, but give you plenty. Like, Jack Clark is a really tough guy to defend, shoots it at over 35% from 3, and he's 6'10". Max Shulga is the conference player of the year. So I don't know if it's always the prettiest, but I do think a lot of times in March you see these teams that love to go really, really fast, and then they run into a team that's willing to, slow it down and grind out defensive possessions, and they don't really know what to do. So this VCU team, I wrote about them as well a little bit ago. I think that they have their top 4, 5, or 6 scorers are fifth-year seniors. Like, these guys are old. These guys are, they've been around the block. So I do believe that they have enough offense. I don't know if it's going to be enough to beat BYU, especially if BYU really gets going. But I just kind of believe in the makeup of their team. They have good size. They have a ton of experience. So I'm still believing in VCU. BYU, really great story, incredible offense. And obviously them doing it under a first-year head coach is really impressive. But I'm still leaning VCU. Like, they have a high major roster, high major bodies. And I think that they will get past that first round game.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NCAA tournament brackets. How concerned should Purdue fans be about an early exit against High Point?
Yeah, somewhat concerned. When I was doing that seed upset, by seed, I considered High Point as my 4-13. I ultimately ended up going with, for all of you bracket filler outers out there, I ultimately ended up going with Yale, who I think is going to beat Texas A&M. But Purdue, this High Point offense is awesome, and they shoot it well, and they're a lot of fun to watch. But again, like, I just think at the end of the day, when postseason basketball can get a little bit slower and they're just going to have a little bit more trouble in the half court, Trey Kaufman-Ren should dominate. And I just don't think that they have enough defensively. And I think Purdue, for all of the worries that you have against them, I do think that they are just a better team in a tournament setting. Braden Smith, I think, will be able to control this game. He's obviously been there for a while and played in a lot of big games. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give you a 3 or a 4, which is probably a little bit higher than a normal 4-13 game, but not high enough for me to be super worried.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fair. So from everything I've read, everything I've looked at, it seems like Florida and Duke, like those are the popular teams that everyone's picking to win the whole thing, which means neither one of them are going to win the whole thing, because that's like the whole point of March Madness. My question is, like, I've heard so many people make the case for Florida and for Duke to win the whole thing. So what's the case against Florida? Let's start with them. What's the case against them winning the whole thing?
Yeah, so Florida is, I'll be honest, they're my pick to win it all. I think that they're excellent. I think that they are balanced. They're so deep. The biggest thing that I look for after guard playing experience is if you can, like, not lose anything with your depth and keep your versatility. And they just, like, run out guys who do everything. It is really impressive. I will say, like, one thing that can get a little dicey for them is when you limit their opportunities in transition. And we talked about the games can slow down a little bit. I think that that's maybe an area where Florida, like, there are two things that they do incredibly well, and it's amazing that they do both well. They score in transition as well as anyone, and they offensive rebound as well as anyone. And you would think, how do they have these big guys who offensive rebound and also can run the floor? And that's just what they do. Like, it is an incredible team. But they have run into some roadblocks when they've run into teams that limit those fast break opportunities, and they really have to get going in their half court sets. I think about a team like Tennessee. Earlier in the year, I know that Florida has beaten Tennessee, but I think about, I've beaten them a couple times, but I do think about the game that they lost. Florida lost to Tennessee. They only had 8 fast break points. They lost by, I think, like 30 points at Tennessee. And also in their region is Missouri, which also beat Florida, limited them on the fast break. So there's my case against Florida, is that if you can even slow them down in the fast break, then there's half the battle done. And then if you can rebound with them, that's the other half of the battle. And even then, you still might not get past them. But there are a couple teams in that region. St. John's, obviously on the bottom half of that region, is excellent defensively and going to be super disciplined in the fast break. So there's my case against them, but I can't really build a whole lot more than that because I do have them winning it all.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. You can read all of his stuff over at cbssports.com. You can subscribe to his newsletter there as well. So I've got Duke beating Florida. What's the case against Duke winning the whole thing?
Duke has the best version of its roster that it's had, but it's a very similar version to its roster that it's had in the past. And that is, if you get a veteran big guy who just beats you up down low, which Tennessee did a couple years ago and UNC did before that in their last couple of exits before last year, you can beat this team. And I think that's a big point in favor of a team like maybe Oregon, if they meet them in the Sweet 16. Like, that's a team with Nate Biddle that can kind of give them trouble down low. I think the Malik Brown injury is a considerable concern for Duke. He's an excellent and versatile defender. And he has shown great signs of growth offensively as well. And that shoulder being what it is, it's a thing that he's dealt with for the past several months. I don't know if he's going to come back, but it just seems like that's been something that's bothered him for a long time. So just if they run into like a big veteran presence, obviously they have Maluak and Patrick and Ngongba down low. Duke does. But I just think like you run into one of these grizzled veteran guys, who's done it before, and you run into a team with a little bit of length as well. I just think like you look at some of their losses this year when they lost to Clemson, Victor Locken went crazy. And that's a guy who most college basketball fans didn't know and probably still don't know, but he had 22 points. And Clemson rebounded almost half of their misses. Even in the Auburn win, which was a really impressive win, Auburn got 40% of its offensive rebound chances. So you're just looking at kind of that archetype of like veteran big man who goes down there and grabs 15 rebounds and has 15 points. And Duke maybe doesn't shoot it as well as it normally does. And all of a sudden they're out because they went, 5 for 25 from three instead of 10 for 25 like they normally do. So that's the case against them. Having said that, I do think Duke storms through their region at the very least.
I'm with you. I think joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NCAA tournament bracket. I think my mind and my picks have been poisoned by how much NBA stuff I watch. Because there's a part of me that's like, I think Cooper Flagg's the best player in the country, and he's going to be the best player in every game that he plays in. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I want to bet against that guy. Where do you stand with Flagg, and should he be the national player of the year?
Yeah, Cooper Flagg is awesome. I think that he should be the national player of the year. I think that he is absolutely terrific. And what people don't realize, if, they watch him and they've seen these offensive highlights, he is an outstanding defender. Outstanding. And he is their best rebounder, which is really remarkable for a guy playing the position that he does. I think that if you've watched a lot of Duke, you will realize that. If you've only watched Duke's big games, you've seen him struggle in some big moments down the stretch. And maybe you're like, what's all the fuss about? The guy is outstanding. He led Duke in all 5 major statistical categories. Points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. Like who does that as a freshman? The last one to do it was Ben Simmons. And I think Cooper Flagg, we forget how good Ben Simmons was. Cooper Flagg is going to be, just fine in the NBA. I think that he is your player of the year. I think that he is really, really terrific. And the biggest thing for me for Duke is that they have that veteran point guard presence in Tyrese Proctor. You saw it against UNC, in the regular season finale. He took over in that game, in a game that could have gotten away from them in terms of UNC was playing really well at the time. It's senior night. RJ Davis is making a bunch of shots. Tyrese Proctor went right back at him, and Duke does such a good job creating open looks for their guys. It's like you try to watch their film and say, what's an issue here? And you really can't run into one. They've been like Ken Palm has them as the best team this millennium. So that's and Cooper Flagg's at the center of it all. Just a terrific player, terrific competitor, will do whatever is needed. You'll see some games where maybe he has only 12 or 14 points, but he's got 8 rebounds and 5 steals and a couple blocks. And that's just who he is. Like, he's so versatile. He's so good at so many things. Like, he's excellent at so many things, but he's also very good at so many things. So just does it all. I think he's your player of the year.
I agree. He's so good that we don't talk about guys like, Knuppel, who's like one of the best freshman guards in the country this year. Like, he's incredible. I don't want to pick against that guy. Last thing for you, Zach, and I will let you go. So I know you said you're probably going to pick Florida to win the whole thing. You just said that you think Duke's going to run through their region. Who are the other 2 teams that you like to make the Final Four?
Yeah, so I am so impressed by Houston this year. This is a team that you think of Houston and you think defense and toughness and rebounding. Houston's the 4th best 3-point shooting team in the country. Like, that is an incredible, especially in this day and age where everyone wants 3-and-D. You don't get 3-and-D any better than Houston. So I do think that they got a tough draw with Gonzaga potentially in that round of 32, but I still have Houston out of the Midwest, and then out of the South. I hate to be so chalky, but I do think it's Auburn. It's really hard to pick chalk, but this year's 1 seeds are historically good, like the best that we've ever seen. So if you go chalk in terms of your Final Four, I think that is probably a good call, probably a safe call. I just think that the 1 seeds are that good. So there you have it, and we're going to be in for one heck of a Final Four in San Antonio.
Yeah, I've got the 4 1 seeds going as well, which, I can say that, and people are like, oh, so you just went all chalk? And I'm like, no, because 4 1 seeds never make it. I went the total opposite of chalk, if you ask me.
Right. Yeah, no, it's exactly, that's what makes it so great is you say chalk, they say chalk, and you say, no, I'm going against the trend.
That's exactly right. Zach, thanks for your time, man. As always, you were great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
You got it. That is Zach Pereles. You can check him out on Twitter at Zach_Pereles. You can read all of his stuff over at cbssports.com. So you go check out his newsletter. It's really good. I read it just about every day just to make sure I don't miss any stories. He does a really good job. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we'll get into the players leaving the Indiana basketball program.
may one day be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. Big news today. Darian DeVries is your new head coach for at Indiana University, not the University of Indiana. Everyone knows it's Indiana University. Well, not everyone. Malik Renew, unaware. Now, Malik Renew entered the transfer portal yesterday. He and Gabe Cupps are, as of right now, I believe the only two in the transfer portal. Obviously, we've got, a couple of guys that are graduating and don't have any more eligibility, which is not like a normal thing now in the world of college sports. It seems like everyone has as much eligibility as they would like to have. So Malik Renew, he's moving on. So is Gabe Cupps. I'm glad they're both leaving. Don't need either one of them to stick around in really the slightest. Don't need either one. Okay, I don't think Indiana is really losing much of anything with both of them leaving. Malik Renew is a lesser version of Trey Kaufman-Ren. He has to play with his back to the basket. He can't shoot. He can only go left. I don't want that guy. More and more of the best teams in college basketball no longer rely on a player that can put their back to the basket and go score. Like, that's just not as prominent of a thing as it used to be. Duke doesn't rely on that. Florida doesn't rely on that. Tennessee doesn't rely on that. Alabama definitely doesn't rely on that. Kentucky doesn't rely on that. I can keep going, but I'll stop. Indiana doesn't need a back to the basket Malik Renew who can only finish over his right shoulder in order to be a good team. Like, they don't need that. They don't. So, see you later. Goodbye. I don't need you. Go have fun playing at Miami or wherever he ends up playing at. When it comes to Gabe Cupps, Indiana doesn't need him either. Comes in, is supposed to be, a shooter. Really only played 1 year. His freshman year, shot 36% from three. Like, that's fine. He only took 2 shots a game. Like, that's not a shooter. It's not. He didn't shoot enough to be classified as a shooter. He wasn't really a point guard. Like, he feels like an undersized shooting guard that doesn't shoot the basketball enough. Okay, so he didn't run the offense super great. He didn't shoot enough to really space the floor. Like, Indiana's not going to miss that guy at all. And then you look at this year, and I know that he tore his meniscus and he didn't play because of that, but he played in 4 games before that meniscus was torn. And he played an average of 6 minutes per game in those games. Indiana does not need that guy. So I guess good news. Luke Goody's coming back. I don't mind that much. He's a capable shooter. He's a bad defender. No doubt about that. If you don't believe me, just go back and watch that Oregon game in the Big Ten tournament. If he's starting for Indiana next year, that's a bad sign. Okay? Like, if that guy is starting for your, high-level Division I power conference college basketball team, your basketball team's probably not very good. Now, if he's coming off the bench, playing 15-ish minutes, making shots, then, that's great, because that's really what he did for Illinois last year. Came in off the bench, made threes, and then he watched most of the game from the Pine. If he's doing that, then you're probably going to be pretty good. But if he's starting for you and you're, relying on him to get offense and score, then you're not going to be very good. Hopefully, Darian DeVries can bring in a little bit more talent. That way, Indiana is not as reliant on Luke Goody next year as they were this year. When we come back, speaking of Darian DeVries, my thoughts on the new Indiana head basketball coach. I'm excited. I think this is a good hire. I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice day. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Tickets, Twitter. You can watch there too, __ Jonathan Smith. Also follow the station at Tickets 1430. Darian DeVries is your new head coach for IU, and I'm excited. I like this hire. He was a hot name last year. Wasn't on the radar as much this year because I just don't think anyone expected him to leave West Virginia after only one season. But when Indiana calls you and they say, hey, we're top 5 in NIL funding, you say, hey, West Virginia, can we be top 5 in NIL funding? And then West Virginia says, no. And then you say, okay, I'm leaving for Indiana. West Virginia, if you want to hold on to good coaches, get your money up. No way around it. So he goes there, coaches at West Virginia this year, gets screwed by the selection committee. Then he realizes that if he was at a blue blood like Indiana, he probably wouldn't have gotten screwed. So he leaves for Indiana, which is clearly a better job than the West Virginia job. Okay, this is a place that deeply cares about basketball. It has all the resources in the world to be able to show up and win immediately. And Darian DeVries is hopefully going to be the coach that is the savior of the Indiana basketball program. Now, he spent a lot of time at Creighton, coached with Greg McDermott there, who's obviously playing in the NCAA tournament tomorrow. I believe that they're the first game of the day. Darian DeVries was an assistant to Greg McDermott for quite a long time because Coach DeVries was an assistant coach at Creighton for 20 years under both Dana Altman and Greg McDermott. Here is Greg McDermott talking about Coach DeVries and him landing the Indiana job.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited for D-Rock and Ashley and their family. That's Tucker and Tatum. It's going to be a really neat experience. Obviously, he's done all the right things. When he was my assistant here, and what he did at Drake, and the way he quickly turned around that West Virginia program in a year. And even though they were a little short getting to the NCAA tournament, it's a great opportunity for him. As I told him today, welcome to the pressure cooker. But I couldn't be more excited for him. He's done it the right way, and now he's got one of the elite jobs in the country.
Greg McDermott, Creighton head coach, who spent a lot of time coaching with new Indiana coach Darian DeVries, talking about Coach DeVries taking the job here at Indiana, and him saying, welcome to the pressure cooker is exactly right. Indiana is going to give him every resource to win immediately. Hopefully, he can do that. That's what he did at West Virginia. I think this is a good hire. I think Darian DeVries is a good head coach because he's won. He shows up at Drake in 2018. Over the course of 6 seasons, Drake went 150-55. They made the NCAA tournament 3 times, won a game. I believe that they won their game. Nope, they didn't win their game last year. I don't know. They made the NCAA tournament 3 times. That's what you need to know in 6 seasons. Then he gets hired on at West Virginia this past year, where he goes 19-13 without his best player for most of the year. He's a good coach, and I say that with confidence because he's won 71% of the games that he's coached. Here's what Coach DeVries said after accepting the Indiana job. He'll have more statements today as he is set to do his press conference at 11:30 to officially be introduced. But here's what Coach DeVries said after accepting the job. Quote, "This is unquestionably one of the top jobs in America. As someone who grew up in the Midwest loving the game of basketball, I've always admired the IU basketball program for its championship level success, tradition, and fan support. There's a passion to succeed at the very highest level, both within the Big Ten and in the NCAA tournament. And that's a desire that as a coach I share. On top of that, the alignment is there on a department and university level to make that happen. I'm excited for this opportunity, and I'm ready to work relentlessly to assemble a staff and a roster that competes for championships." Once again, that was Darian DeVries, new Indiana men's basketball head coach. My favorite thing about him is he understands college basketball. It is. He dealt with NIL, and he's been at a big school for a year. Like he understands college basketball. He spent 20 years as an assistant. Okay, like this guy's coached college basketball for 27 years. That's a lot. And part of why I like this hire and why it makes a lot of sense is because this hire is the total opposite of Mike Woodson. Like DeVries and Mike Woodson don't really on the surface seem like they could be any different. Okay, and I am officially coining this the ex-girlfriend theory because I think we see this all the time in sports when teams hire new coaches. For those unfamiliar, the ex-girlfriend theory is this. When people break up, their next significant other tends to be the opposite of whoever they just broke up with. This is especially true in sports. And we're seeing this just at Indiana in terms of how they hire their basketball coaches. Archie Miller and Mike Woodson couldn't have been any more different than what they were. They seriously, couldn't have been any more different. Archie Miller, not a coach night guy, not really an NBA guy. And then you have Mike Woodson, who is a coach night guy, obviously played at Indiana and has major ties to the NBA. Mike Woodson and Archie Miller couldn't have been any different. Now they hire Darian DeVries to follow Mike Woodson. And Darian DeVries and Mike Woodson couldn't be any different. Mike Woodson was a former Indiana player. Darian DeVries played at Northern Iowa. Mike Woodson has heavy NBA ties. Played in the NBA for 11 years. Coached in the NBA as both an assistant and a head coach for 22 years before coming to Indiana to take over and be the head coach. And then you take Darian DeVries, who has never played or coached in the NBA. He's a college coach through and through. That's what he has spent his entire professional life doing. Mike Woodson hadn't had any success coaching in college before he showed up at Indiana. He barely had any success coaching in the NBA. Darian DeVries, however, has a proven track record of winning in college. 150-55 at Drake. Made the NCAA tournament 3 times. Coming out of the Missouri Valley Conference. Showed up at West Virginia and went 19-13 in his first year there. That's a good first season at West Virginia. You say, oh, but Jonathan, he went 19-13 and didn't make the NCAA tournament. Sounds a lot like Indiana's season. Here's the difference. West Virginia's best player, Tucker DeVries, that's right, Darian DeVries' son, only played 8 games. And he is expected to follow his dad to Indiana for his final year of eligibility. His son was a stud at Drake and was going to be a stud in the Big 12, averaging 15 points and 5 rebounds, shooting 47% from 3 before he got hurt. The kid can flat out shoot the rock. He can put it on the deck. He's a big wing. Okay, losing a player like that makes it tough to win. But before he got hurt, West Virginia's best player, before he got hurt, West Virginia beat Gonzaga. This is early in the year when Gonzaga was rolling. And Arizona. 2 teams that made the tournament, and if either one of them made the Sweet 16, no one would be surprised by that. When you lose one of your best players, you're not going to be as good. Shocker. Injuries are not an excuse. That is a legitimate reason to lose games. And despite West Virginia losing their best player, Darian DeVries figured out a way for them to win games and to be competitive in the Big 12. Could you imagine this Indiana team if they'd lost whoever their best player was this last year? I don't know who their best player was. Sure, they lost Malik Renew for 2 weeks, but that's nothing compared to losing Tucker DeVries for the whole year, minus 8 games. Darian DeVries took over a team that went 9-23 the year prior. He showed up and improved their record to 19-13. That's a major improvement in 1 year. And now he's coming to Indiana, a program that is in a much better place than West Virginia was when he took over West Virginia. Okay, like they're in much better shape. More NIL money, better players. So far, we're still waiting to see who else is going to enter the portal. For those of you who missed it, Malik Renew, he entered the portal, and Cooper Kupps, they're both leaving the University of Indiana, as Malik Renew called it. So DeVries is coming into a program that just went 19-13. Like they're in a much better place than West Virginia was when he took over there. And if he shows up, they go from 19-13 to 25-7, 24-8. Then I don't think anyone will be upset about him being hired and him being the new head coach at Indiana. His, introductory press conference is coming up here in like 20 minutes. Should be, very interesting, very intrigued to hear what he has to say. Please don't pontificate. Just show up, say that you want to win, and everything will be perfect. Seriously, that's all we need. Just say that you want to win. Repeat that statement that you released, talking about restoring Indiana to winning national championships. Say that, and we're good. Okay, I don't need to hear about former greats. I don't need to hear about it. Just show up, say that you're happy to be here, and that you want to win, and then everything from that point forward will be just fine and dandy. Now, I've got thoughts on the first four from last night and tonight. St. Francis and Alabama State, that game was awesome. Hopefully you watched it. Hard to argue against the NCAA tournament starting with a buzzer beater off of a full court pass. Alabama State wins that game 70-68. Congrats to Alabama State. Congrats to St. Francis for covering. They now get to play Auburn, who's going to beat them by 20 or more. So congratulations. So that game was amazing. And then, North Carolina is like, we don't belong. You don't. We don't belong in the NCAA tournament. Watch this. And they just beat the dog out of San Diego State. And, I was excited for that game. And then North Carolina made it no fun from the jump. San Diego State led that game for a whopping 25 seconds. And that was it. Just an absolute drubbing. That game was no fun whatsoever. North Carolina still shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament. Anyway, we got a taste last night of what makes March Madness great. You get these crazy last-second buzzer beaters because most of the players out there, are young and their minds all over the place, and they just make mistakes because of that. Like that full court pass in the St. Francis Alabama State game that led to the game winner hit like 4 different players in the hands before it was eventually grabbed by an Alabama State player who then laid it in. Like uncontested. There's like 7 guys around the rim and like no one contested this layup. And that just feels like something that only happens in March Madness. On the flip side, we saw what else we get in the NCAA tournament. North Carolina just dished out an absolute drubbing to San Diego State. And for every buzzer beater that we get, we're also going to get a couple of beatdowns like we did last night. That's the best part about the tournament tomorrow and Friday. There's going to be a couple of beatdowns, but there's a game on that's coming down to the wire. The best thing about March Madness tomorrow and Friday is there's always going to be a game on. And I can't wait for tonight. We got Mount St. Mary's versus American University. Can't wait. That's going to be an absolute blast. That game is, tonight at 6:40. Hopefully that game between the two 16 seeds that are playing for the right to get beat by Duke. Hopefully that game is as great as the two 16 seeds from last night. And then Xavier, they play Texas. Hopefully that game's way better than the North Carolina San Diego State game. And I'm very intrigued to see who wins this one, because it's pretty normal for one of the 11 seeds that play in the first 4 to win their opening round game. North Carolina looked really good. I think everyone's going to pick them. They're favored over Ole Miss. They are a 1.5-point favorite, which is, I find, very interesting. Part of that's because RJ Davis is a beast. So Ole Miss, North Carolina, first round. That game's going to be awesome. The winner of Texas and Xavier, they are set to play against, let me look. They're set to play against Illinois, which should be an amazing game as well. People really like Illinois and just kind of everything that they bring to the table. So can't wait to watch these games tonight. They're going to be fantastic. Can't wait for the real tournament to start tomorrow. Purdue fans, Purdue plays High Point at 12:40 tomorrow. So that game will be hopefully not very much fun. Speaking of Purdue, Braden Smith named a first-team All-American, and he should have been. Undoubtedly, he should win the Bob Cousy Award for best point guard in the country as well. Trey Kaufman-Ren was not named an All-American. He was snubbed. He should have undoubtedly been named an All-American. I'm going to talk about Braden Smith being an All-American and tell you why Trey Kaufman-Ren got snubbed when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there, subscribe. Hop in the chat. Tell me your thoughts on Darian DeVries being the new head coach at Indiana University. Almost pulled a Malik Renew. That would have been bad. You can also watch the show over on Twitter or X, the Everything app, __ Jonathan Smith. We're streaming the show there. And yeah, it's good. No matter how you listen, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And Braden Smith appreciates being a first-team All-American. This was clear. This was easy. He should also win the Bob Cousy Award for being the best point guard in the country. I love the hate that he's gotten. It's great. Last year he was an ED merchant. Him being, named a first-team All-American. I'm going through the comments, and I got like mad Maryland fans saying he's not even the best player on his team, which is just not true. It just means that you're not watching Purdue play, if that's really what you think. At the same time, though, I don't think it would be. I think it would be wrong of me to not point out the unfair advantage that Braden Smith has had these last few years. I mean, I just think it definitely plays in his favor, the fact that he's an undersized, not very athletic white guy. I mean, everyone built like that is just an amazing basketball player. If you don't believe me, come watch me play pickup sometime. I get buckets. I'm just saying. Seriously, though, Braden Smith being an All-American is why Matt Painter recruits the way that he does. He doesn't recruit these overly athletic players. He just wants to bring in guys that are skilled and know how to play basketball. And when you watch Braden Smith, the first thing you realize is that this dude is just smart and he knows how to play basketball. And then you realize that he's very skilled. Personally, I would prefer it if Coach Painter brought in skilled and athletic players, but I'm not going to critique Coach Painter. And to me, when I look at Braden Smith, he seems like the just perfect Coach Painter recruit. He's just this under-recruited winner coming out of high school. Shows up at Purdue, and his skill, his skill level and his just ability to think through things gets him on the floor. He shoots 38% from three as a freshman. Okay, now his decision-making needed some polishing. Okay, but Coach Painter, being the excellent head coach that he is, helps him kind of develop that. And now we see him as the best point guard in all of college basketball. And this is what Coach Painter does, man. He brings in these guys that are skilled and need just a little bit of development. He helps them get better in that area. And then all of a sudden, Braden Smith is an All-American. Yeah, it is the Coach Painter blueprint to a T. Now, I don't think Braden Smith is an NBA player. I don't think he's big enough to do that. But he's going to go down as one of the best point guards in the history of the Big Ten. And it's because of his skill, how smart he plays the game, and Coach Painter's ability to get the best out of him. Now, I did have a bit of an issue with the All-American list. Trey Kaufman-Ren should have been an All-American. Not first team, not even second team. But he should have gotten the nod over Hunter Dickinson to be on the third team, to be a third team All-American. He should have. Trey Kaufman-Ren averages more points than Hunter Dickinson. He's a much more efficient shooter from the field than Hunter Dickinson. Every other stat between the two is basically the same. The only difference is Hunter Dickinson is a better rebounder, averaging 10 a game, to Trey Kaufman-Ren 6.5. But Trey Kaufman-Ren is a much better offensive player who played on a team that, it is much better. Okay? But here's the thing. Here's the kicker for me. Here's why I would pick Trey Kaufman-Ren over Hunter Dickinson to be an All-American this year. Trey Kaufman-Ren is the 9th player since 1947 to play in a power conference and average 20 points or more, 5 rebounds or more, and 2 assists per game or more on 60% shooting from the field. Here are the guys on that list. Zach Edey, obviously, that's, a pretty easy one. Zion Williamson, Blake Griffin, Michael Bradley, Evan Eschmeyer, Tim Duncan, Corliss Williamson, the big nasty, go Hogs, and Horace Grant. That is an insane list to be on. The season that we just saw from Trey Kaufman-Ren was one of the best seasons you will see from a big man in college basketball, especially on the offensive end. He should have been an All-American. He's been one of the best players in the country all year. He bails Purdue out offensively just as much, honestly, if not more, than Braden Smith does. His ability to catch the ball with, 5 seconds or less left on the shot clock, take a dribble or two, get to his right hand very quickly and score. It's uncanny. It really is. And instead of giving that guy the nod to be, third team All-American, Hunter Dickinson, who played on a worse team and didn't put up the same numbers as Trey Kaufman-Ren, they gave it to him instead. Probably just because he plays for Kansas. Because what world would we be living in if Kansas didn't have at least one All-American? It's annoying and straight up wrong. Trey Kaufman-Ren got snubbed. He should have been an All-American. No other way to really put it. Okay. Now, man, moving on back to Indiana, who, as I mentioned already, hired Darian DeVries to be their new head coach. He's, about to start his introductory press conference here in about 2.5 minutes or so. And I just want to go over what I would like to hear from him. And really, the answer is nothing. I know people get a little fed up and annoyed with Shane Steichen whenever he addresses the media. And he says, absolutely nothing every time that he talks to the media. It's honestly, I find it honestly kind of funny. But, I know a lot of people don't. Like, they want to hear coaches talk and, give a little bit of insight and do all those things. That's not me. Like, that's not what I want. I want Darian DeVries to sit at that podium and, someone's going to ask him, why'd you leave West Virginia for Indiana? It's a layup. That is a layup question. You very simply say, because it's freaking Indiana. And you just leave it. Like, you don't say anything else after that. Okay? And then, when someone says, well, what do you like about Indiana? The history. Like be short, be concise. Don't, pontificate. Don't, just answer, be as short and concise as possible. I don't need a history lesson on Indiana. I don't need you to talk about Coach Knight and the legacy that he left in Indiana. I don't need any of that. What I would like to hear, though, because I think someone should ask this question. Will they? I don't know. But someone should definitely ask, how do you go about winning here? And I really hope that he says that we bring in a bunch of guards that can dribble, pass, and shoot, because that would be wonderful. I just don't want to walk away from the press conference annoyed. I just want to hear these guys. I just want to hear him be short, concise, say that he's here to win, and then move on. Because, everyone knows about Mike Woodson, Coach Woodson, and, the cigars and the wine, and, it seemed like he didn't always really live in Bloomington, and he was gone a lot, and just a lot of things that made it feel like Mike Woodson was just kind of drawing a paycheck. That's what it felt like at times. Not accusing, Coach Woodson of anything. But there were just some things about him that's older, doesn't really seem like he wants to be here all that much anymore outside of the money. And when we walk away from the press conference today, which should have just started, I just want to walk away with this feeling of this guy really wants to be here, which he clearly does. He left West Virginia for this job. He's 49 years old. Hopefully, he wins and he's here for the next, 20 years or whatever it winds up being. I just want to walk away with that feeling in my gut of like, this guy's here. And most importantly, this guy's here to win. And winning starts with, acquiring good players. Indiana is out here having teams hits. Indiana's having players hits. That transfer portal, they haven't lost much so far. If you want an update on all that stuff, follow Gritty on Twitter. She's got like this poster thing where she puts sticky notes on it. It's honestly pretty cool. But anyway, they've got these guys leaving. They don't need to come back. Like Gabe Cupps, he's one of them. I'm going to talk about him here in a second. But he said that he's entering the portal, but he's keeping his eye on Indiana. Nah, bro, you entered the portal. You clearly don't want to be here, because if you wanted to be here, then you never would have entered the portal in the first place. We don't need you. As soon as you enter that portal, you are no longer eligible to be an Indiana Hoosier. Like that portal is one way. You are not coming back. And with Gabe Cupps and Malik Reneau in the portal, I don't think Indiana's really losing all that much. So yeah, well, Malik Reneau, leading scorer 2 years ago, second leading scorer this last year. Isn't he valuable? Not really. You went 19-13 with him. Come on now. You could argue that Indiana was better without him than they were with him. Okay? Like he's not a guy that I think wins in college basketball anymore. This is something that I think we're going to see actually take place during this tournament. And as we get more and more young coaches in the game, we're going to continue to see this. And you don't need a back to the basket guy anymore. You don't need it. And that's exactly what Malik Reneau is. He's got to put his back to the basket. He's got to get to he's got to shoot over his right shoulder because he can't finish with his right hand. It's amazing the number of Division I college basketball players that can't finish with both hands around the rim. It's really frustrating, honestly. But anyway, you don't need that guy to win. You don't need a guy that clogs the lane and can't shoot and can only go left. I don't want that guy. I don't think Darian DeVries wants that guy. And when you look at the best teams in college basketball, more and more of them are not relying on post scoring. Duke doesn't really rely on that. Like, yes, they give Cooper Flagg the ball on the block, but he's not only scoring through posting up. Florida, they don't rely on post touches. They rely on their guards and their shot creators. Tennessee doesn't rely on that. Alabama, they haven't relied on a back-to-the-basket guy in years. Kentucky, under Mark Pope, they don't rely on that. BYU, one of the best, most prolific offenses in the country, they don't rely on that. I can keep going, but I will stop. Indiana doesn't need a back-to-the-basket guy who can only go left and doesn't know that it's Indiana University, not the University of Indiana. Like, they don't need that guy on their roster. He's an above-average player. We don't need you. Sayonara. Go literally anywhere else. And then you got Gabe Cupps, who should definitely not be allowed to come back because I don't think he's a Big Ten player. He played a decent amount as a freshman, shot 36% from three on 2 shots per game. That's not a shooter. He didn't run the offense like a point guard. Okay, he's an undersized shooting guard that doesn't want to shoot. That's problematic. That is not Big Ten, material. It's not. And then this year, I know he tore his meniscus, but he played in 4 games before he tore his meniscus, and he averaged 6 minutes per game in those games. Once again, Indiana doesn't need that guy. Darian DeVries needs to bring in guys that are tough, can dribble, pass, and shoot at every position, because that is what college basketball is going towards more and more every single year. Luke Goody, he's coming back. I don't mind it. If he's coming off the bench, if Luke Goody's starting for you, then your team's probably not going to be very good. That's just the reality of it. But if he's coming in off the bench, playing, 15 minutes, and it's one of those things where it's like, like he shot really well today, or he's shooting the ball really well right now. If that continues, then, I'll leave him out on the floor a little bit longer. Like, that makes sense, right? If that's his role. But if he's going to be like a guy that you're relying on, then your team's probably not going to be very good. So as of right now, I don't care who comes back. I just want for Coach DeVries, when he's doing his press conference today, I just want him to sound smart. I want him to be about winning, and I want him to bring in guys that are tough and can do multiple things on the offensive end of the floor. When we come back, here in about 4 minutes, the NCAA tournament starts tomorrow. I'm going to run you through my bracket. You know, it's going to be the first perfect bracket ever. I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Head over to YouTube, subscribe to the Indy's Sports Ticket YouTube channel. You can watch the show there, be part of the conversation. Let me know in that YouTube chat who you have winning your bracket. Now, I'm going to go through mine, and we're going to go region by region. We're going to start in the South region, which I have now coined as the Marina Trench region. For those who don't know, the Marina Trench is the deepest part of the ocean. So I named it that because this is like there's just so many deep teams in this part of the bracket. Okay, Auburn, like they're going like 9 guys deep. A&M has a lot of depth. Creighton will play 9 guys. Michigan will play 9 guys. Iowa State has a lot of depth. Marquette, they'll play 9 guys. All of these teams are deep and are more than willing to go into their bench. This is the South region, also now coined as the Marina Trench region. That is the upper left portion of your bracket. So I've got Auburn, A&M, Iowa State, and New Mexico advancing to my Sweet 16. Auburn, A&M. I'm really bad at this. Yeah, my Sweet 16. Here we go. I got it. Auburn, A&M, Iowa State, and New Mexico. Okay, that is my Sweet 16. New Mexico, this is the mid-major team that I really like. They have good guards. They are big. They can really score. Their size allows them to be a little better defensively against these, Power 6 conference teams in the world of college basketball. Michigan State's, people are talking about like speeding them up and playing them fast. That's not my concern with them. I think that they can play at really any speed. My concern for them is they just don't shoot the ball very well. And New Mexico does. And I just kind of expect for New Mexico to hit 4 or 5 more threes than Michigan State does, and that wind up being the difference in the game. So New Mexico, this is the double-digit seed that I have going a decent ways. A lot of people like North Carolina to beat Ole Miss. I'm not going to let recency bias kind of get in the way of my view of Ole Miss. They're tough on the defensive side of the floor. Chris Beard wins in the tournament. He has a reputation of winning in March, so I'm not betting against him. Even though I do have him losing to Iowa State in the second round. People are down on them, and I'm not really too sure why, but ultimately I've got Auburn beating Iowa State to advance to the Final Four coming out of the South region, also now coined as the Marina Trench region due to the depth. Okay, moving down, bottom left corner of your bracket, the West region where the 1 seed is Florida. This is, to me, also the Legends region. Danny Hurley's in this corner of the bracket. Bill Self, head coach of Kansas. John Calipari's in this part of the bracket. Rick Pitino, he's in this part of the bracket. They're all legends. Okay, guys like Chris Crutchfield, he's going to be a legend in Omaha because this is the first time Omaha has ever made the NCAA tournament. Penny Hardaway, that guy's a Memphis legend for obvious reasons. Okay, there are just a lot of legends in this Western region of the bracket. And so that is what I have coined it as. I've got a lot of chalk. I've got a lot of chalk really in general. It's probably not good. But at the same time, you know what? Hey, it's fine. I've got the higher seed winning except for Arkansas. I do have them beating Kansas. That's straight up bias. I'm not picking Arkansas to lose in the first round. Sorry. But, I've got, Florida playing UConn. I do think that UConn-Florida game is going to be really fun, really, really interesting. I'm actually going to flip something. I'm going to take Colorado State to beat Memphis because Colorado State's hot, and I just don't like that I picked the better seed in every game. So we're going to flip that. Doesn't matter. I've got them losing to Maryland. Maryland's a tough team. I do have them playing Florida in my Sweet 16. I think that's going to be a really interesting game just because Maryland and Florida both have a lot of guys that just make shots. Like these are two very good offensive teams. I think Florida just has a little bit more talent. They have more depth. So I'm going to take Florida to beat Maryland and advance to my Elite Eight. Bottom side of the bracket, I've got St. John's playing Texas Tech. I like teams that can shoot the basketball. And I don't like teams that cannot shoot the basketball. St. John's can't shoot. Like they just really struggle to knock down perimeter shots. So I have them losing to Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. I've got Florida playing Texas Tech with Florida winning and advancing to my Final Four. Okay, moving to the right, to the Midwest region, which I've coined the Dan Dockich region. Say, Jonathan, why is the Midwest the Dan Dockich region? Because Dan, I've worked with him for a little over a year now. Dan's favorite word, favorite trait of any team or really person is toughness. And the Midwest region has a ton of teams that are incredibly tough. Houston, tough, mean, defensive team who can really shoot it this year, by the way, which gives them a little bit better of a chance to, I think, win some of these kind of more closer, tight-knit games. So I've got them winning. Everyone really likes Gonzaga coming into this NCAA tournament, which I kind of understand. But I'm picking Georgia. I don't think people realize how good the SEC was this year. Okay, and the best version of Georgia can beat anybody. I know this because they beat Florida and they beat St. John's. So I'm going to pick Georgia to beat Gonzaga. I know, Gonzaga is a team that I know a lot of people even have upsetting Houston in that second round. I don't have that. I do have, for my Purdue fans out there, don't fret. Don't fret. I've got Purdue beating High Point. All right, don't worry about it. Okay, it's like, could High Point beat them? Absolutely, they could. That game's actually, I think, going to be a lot of fun. Once again, that game tips tomorrow at 12:40. So I've got them, winning that one. Illinois and Texas and Xavier. If Texas wins that game, I'm going to flip my pick and have Texas beating Illinois. But if it's Xavier, I'm undoubtedly taking Illinois because I don't think Xavier is very good. So kind of waiting to see on the results of that tonight, who I take there. Either way, I'm going to have Kentucky beating whoever they play coming out of that game in the second round. I've got Utah State beating UCLA beating Utah State, and then Tennessee beating them. I've got a lot of chalk in this lower right-hand region of the bracket. Houston beating Purdue to advance to the Elite Eight, with Tennessee beating Kentucky to advance to the Elite Eight, and Houston ultimately coming out of that Midwest region. And then in the Eastern region, I don't like this region because there's a lot of teams that I really like, but I don't know. I'm picking against them, and I don't really know why. So I got Baylor beating Mississippi State. Baylor's just very dynamic on the offensive side of the ball, so I am going to take them to win that game. So they're going to be good. They're going to be fine. Even though I think Baylor Mississippi State, that game is actually going to be a lot of fun. That game's on Friday at 12:15. So Baylor over them doesn't matter because Duke's going to beat whoever wins that game. And then Oregon Liberty. This is another one of my 12-5 upsets. I'm going to take Liberty to beat Oregon. That team can just really shoot the basketball at an incredibly high, at a high rate. Like they're top 25 in the country in 3-point rate. Like they get them up, and they're 5th in the country in 3-point percentage. They're going to take a lot of threes. They're going to make a lot of them. That's not exactly Oregon's strong suit. I've talked about them, a little bit this year. Like they're just kind of good at everything, not great at any one thing. So I'm going to take Liberty. I think that they just shoot the crap out of the ball to upset Oregon. I've got them ultimately losing to Arizona, though. Down in the bottom side, everyone likes VCU, which makes me not want to like VCU. But I do have them beating BYU. Really good, tough team on the defensive side of the ball. I didn't say the nickname of this region. Give me one sec as I continue to work through that. The East region, I am calling the American Military region. Because when I think about the military here in the United States, I think about just how dominant we are. Like we have a lot of firepower, okay? Just like the South region. Like there are some awesome offensive teams in this part of the bracket. Duke can fill it up. BYU, Liberty can really score it. Wisconsin can really score it. Arizona is a good offensive team. St. Mary's, pretty solid offensive team. Oregon from time to time, they can light it up. Like there's just a lot of offense in this region. So that is why it is the American Military region. Anyway, so as I was saying, Liberty upsets Oregon. Doesn't matter, though, because I've got Arizona beating them and advancing to the Sweet 16. I've got Wisconsin, making some waves here, obviously getting by Montana, beating VCU in that second round game, and then playing Alabama. And I'm taking Wisconsin. Alabama, it's a normal Alabama team that doesn't shoot the ball as well as they have in years past. Like last year, Wisconsin is more than capable offensively of matching everything that Alabama throws at them and going, bucket for bucket. I also think Wisconsin's a better defensive team than Alabama. So I'm going to take Wisconsin to play Duke in the Elite Eight, but Duke wins and advances to the Final Four. And what do you know? All 4 number 1 seeds are in my Final Four. And I'm very proud of that. I've got people chiming in saying who they're taking to win the whole thing. John Buzzard's got Auburn, which I don't mind. Like, they've probably been the best team all year from wire to wire. Bolin family, I don't know how you say that. He's got Houston. Don't mind that either. They say defense wins championships, so I don't really mind it. So as I was saying, I've got all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. And some people would say it's chalk. I would say it's not chalk because this never happens. And I am so intrigued to see. I hope this is what happens. Like, I hope we get all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. Because to me, these have been the 4 best teams all year. And like, it's not going to happen this way. It never does. But I hope this is what we get. I've got Duke playing Florida. And I've got Duke winning the whole thing. When you get to these big games, I want to have the best player. And Duke's going to have the best player in every game that they play in all year. Like, when they play Houston, Houston is a great defensive team. They're not stopping Cooper Flagg, though. Like, that guy is going to positively impact the game in so many different ways that I can't not pick him. That's really kind of where I'm at. Okay? John Buzzard saying he had Wisconsin in his Final Four, and that's just flat out crazy. I don't think it is. I really like Wisconsin. There's definitely a world where that happens. So I love them. I want them. I want Duke to win just because I also like John Shire. Like, make Duke likable again. Is that possible? I don't know. But John Shire just might do it. So I'm just very intrigued to kind of see how this goes. I've got Duke beating Florida. Florida could just as easily beat Duke. Any one of those 1 seeds can win the whole thing, and I would not be surprised. But I like Duke. I just think they're supremely talented. Once again, Cooper Flagg's going to impact that game positively in so many different ways that it's just hard for me not to pick Duke. And then they've got just a ton of talent around him as well. Con Knuppel is just a flat-out bucket. He's a 6'7" point guard. And this is my favorite thing about Duke. When they need to score, I know exactly what they're going to, as I do for all of these 1 seeds, right? But I like Duke's the most. They're going to take their 6'7" point guard, put him in a screen and roll with their 6'10" power forward, Cooper Flagg. They're gonna set a ball screen. They're both, shooting north of 38% from 3. So, like, Con Knuppel's a threat to pull up and hit a 3. Cooper Flagg's a threat to pop out and hit a 3. Since Con Knuppel is 6'7", he finishes at the rim with relative ease because he's tall and he's long. Cooper Flagg's not only is he the best player on every court that he plays on, he's almost always the most athletic player too. So their ability to finish at the rim, they're both excellent passers. I like Duke's go-to offense more than anyone else's in the country. Like, when they go to that, I think they're going to score every single time. And they usually do. Okay? And if they're not scoring, they're generating some kind of excellent look from beyond the arc. So I've got Duke winning the whole thing. I feel really good about it. It's like one of those things where if I'd picked, Florida or, fill in the blank with literally any other team and Duke won the whole thing, like, I would feel so stupid. I'd be so mad at myself. But picking Duke, if they win the whole thing, or if they don't win the whole thing, I can gladly just bow out and be like, you know what? That's fine. That's just the way that it goes sometimes. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in to my show. I greatly appreciate it, whether you watch it on YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket, Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, or via that Indie Sports Ticket app. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. The Dan Dockett Show, it's loaded up today. Coach Boeheim at 12:30. Dan's got a guest of his own at 12:10. And then later on in the day, 2 o'clock, Eddie White is going to join the show. That's going to do it here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I will talk to you tomorrow starting at 10. We're going to watch games together. It's going to be a blast. I'm doing a Funless Friday tomorrow, doing it a day early just because I feel like it needs to start on the day that the NCAA tournament starts. So the Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 4.5 minutes. I'll talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.